So I'm Brad Rhodes. I'm going to talk about closing unified communications opportunities. I'm a healthcare account manager out of Southern California. So the key to closing opportunities is understanding the customer's pain points. Some of the key things that we see in unified communications or general infrastructure as well is really the errors that can happen when you don't have centralized management. When you're trying to coordinate an application like Cisco UC across a worldwide environment, it actually makes a lot of sense to try and centralize the overall management and reduce human error from that environment. The other kind of key piece here, and dovetailing into that pain point, is that simplifying the management, not only centralizing it, reduces the amount of people that have to touch an environment as well. So that adds a lot of, or reduces a lot of complexity from the overall management of that environment. The other kind of key piece is you've got to understand the resiliency of a unified communications environment, because that's a really, really big driver for the solutions that actually support those applications. So having a solution that has built-in resiliency truly reduces the overall risk that a customer is going to have to deal with in that environment. The last kind of piece is that traditionally things are not automated, so customers have to go out and try and figure out how to build that automation themselves, and usually it ends up being lots of services and lots of tools and software packages trying to build automation, and it just creates a very interesting snowball effect that is very difficult to manage. So understanding that and understanding the automation inherent in a Nutanix solution really kind of addresses that key pain point that customers have about too many tools and too many layers of management. One of the keys to understanding the sales cycle is to really make sure that you're aligned with the vendor of the unified communication solution, whether it's Microsoft or Avaya or Cisco. Having them on board early and having them validate your solution is going to really help you not stall a deal out. I've been in multiple cycles with each of those where there were questions that each of those kind of UC vendors would have that would kind of stall the overall environment. So you really have to make sure that you're ahead of that and kind of charging forward and controlling the message to make sure that they understand what you're positioning and are on board with it. And if not, making sure that you realign so that everybody feels comfortable with the solution that you're moving forward with, and that the customer feels comfortable that you're working in tandem with the unified communications vendor as well. You want to make sure that you're aligning the submissions to their architecture guidelines, and as well as getting their support. That has been one of the most critical things to moving unified communications forward, regardless of which vendor that we're actually working with, is having their representatives on board with the underlying architecture that you're positioning in front of them. So for the one that we're kind of talking about here, every deal has competition. The traditional players were involved, the HPs, the Dells, the EMCs, and each of them was kind of competing for a piece of the overall architecture. They could not match our simplicity of an overall solution. Each of them had a portion of the solution versus an entire stack that we were going in there and saying, hey, drop it on Nutanix and you can do all of the unified communications pieces managed globally. No one else had anything remotely like that. They couldn't match the operational impact because they don't have those type of solutions, and they could not deliver it with the speed and efficiency that we could. We were able to basically deliver the solution in a couple of weeks worldwide and had everything up and running probably within a month from an infrastructure footprint perspective. That was right about when somebody else would start shipping their gear. We had everything up and running. So no one was able to match us when we kind of committed to these dates and timeframes, and we're able to actually deliver on that. So when it comes to closing the deal, make sure to work very, very closely with Nutanix on the proposal to make sure that everything is aligned with how whichever unified communication system vendor you're working with is going to want to see the information, and the customer wants to see the information. So just stay very, very tight to make sure that everything is clean and efficient and there aren't going to be questions down the road. Make sure you leverage TCO models and the information around those, because that's what's really going to set you apart from everyone else out there. So whether you're talking any of those, HP, Dell, EMC, et cetera, kind of vendors, all of them are going to have pieces of the overall solution, and it'll be very difficult for them to actually create a TCO operational model, whereas it's very easy for Nutanix to do that because we do own the entire stack. Make sure that you are going with the management and doing whiteboards and deep dives around the overall solution, and lay it out for them based on the expenditures that they're going to have to play with a traditional environment. Spending everything up front versus buying what you need and buying it incrementally just on time. Putting that on a whiteboard and doing it for the executives is a very, very easy way to crystallize in their mind why Nutanix is such a different solution and architecture, even from a business perspective versus a technology. The other thing that we did was we actually demoed the central management strategy. We leveraged our hosted POC solution to the block and infrastructure that they had already purchased and showed them just how easy it would be to get somebody up to speed with managing the worldwide solution, which really helped to kind of seal the deal for us. When you look at Nutanix, we have a ton of resources that we can bring to bear for customers looking at unified communication solutions. We have some of the top experts in the industry around unified communications that can help line up the requirements from the vendor to the actual Nutanix architecture that you put on site. The other things that we have are things like hosted POCs to actually demo something like Prism Central, which helped us close this deal for a worldwide unified communications deployment. And then really leveraging GSO for sizing and scoping above that if they need additional integration services. So if you think of like a call center, maybe they need to tie it to some sort of performance monitoring or metrics solution that they already have in place. We can leverage GSO to help with that type of tie-in and integration. So food for thought. Unified communications is a critical piece of any business. If you think about it, email is very, very critical, but if you pick up the phone and can't make a phone call, or if you can't basically have that tied into the rest of your day-to-day workflow, it's a very, very big business disruptor if you don't have your phone system up and running. It really should be separate from an infrastructure perspective. You don't want your unified communication solution at the mercy of a big SQL database backup dump or something that's happening every night that may thrash the performance of your unified communications. With Nutanix, we isolate that anyway, but it's always a good idea and best practice to really separate that out, and that's what the vendors would recommend themselves as well. It should always be highly resilient, so this is going to increase the size of your deals to make sure that you have the level of redundancy built in that a customer is going to want to leverage. And it should always be on. You know, we don't want to necessarily work on a DR solution. We want to try and build this as an always-on solution as much as possible. Don't waver and undersize. Customers will come back and try to push back and say, well, maybe that's too big and I don't need that much resiliency. If you're the one putting your name on the line for their communication system, make sure that you're not going to waver and have a customer dictate the requirements. Really try and educate them based on the best solution you can possibly put in front of them, because this truly is a critical solution. Be an advisor and show conviction that you're designing the right architecture and the right solution to help them with their unified communications experience. So with that, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Brad Rhodes. Good luck selling unified communications. Be passionate, show your conviction. This is a great workload to put on Nutanix. I'll see you out there in the field.